Stop right here. Before you spend one single dollar on your homestead, I need to show you the biggest mistakes that cost thousands of dollars. Not because people do things wrong, but because they do things right in the wrong order. I'm talking about the hidden traps that even experienced homesteaders fall into. The things nobody warns you about because they seem obvious until they're not. And the worst part? By the time you realize the mistake, you've already spent the money. I've been documenting homestead building for years, and I've seen something over and over again. Families will show me their new property, excited, ready to build. They'll ask me what to do first, and I watch them make the same mistake. They start building before they understand what the land is telling them. They put up a fence in the wrong spot. They build a garden bed where water floods every spring. They dig a well where the ground is pure clay. They create more problems than they solve because they didn't stop to listen to what already happened on that land. This is the first mistake that costs real money, ignoring what the land has already learned. See, every piece of property has a story written in the earth. Water always finds the same paths. Frost heaves in the same spots. Wind comes from one direction. The trees are taller on one side. Animals beat trails to the same places. Your job isn't to fight that story. Your job is to read it and work with it. But most folks show up in spring, see bare ground, and think it's a blank slate. It's not. It's a book, and you need to read it before you start writing. Here's what the old ways teach you. Sit on your land for a full year before you build anything permanent. Watch where the water goes when it rains hard. Notice which spots stay soggy in spring. See where the wind cuts cold in January. Find the frost line by watching what heaves up and what stays still. Understand which direction the sun takes across your fields. See what grows naturally. That tells you the soil type, the drainage, the mineral content. The people who've built homesteads successfully for generations didn't rush. They didn't have a choice. You couldn't order materials by next Tuesday, so you observed. You asked the neighbors what the land does. You waited. And when you finally built, you built in the right place, the first time, and it lasted. The families that fail, and I mean genuinely fail, lose their animals, waste their crops, spend money on fixes. They built before they understood. I watched someone build a $1,000 raised garden system right in a spot where water rushes down every spring. By the third heavy rain, half the soil was in the neighbor's property. They rebuilt it higher up, spent another $500, and finally got it right. All of that was avoidable. The person who lived on that land for 20 years could have told them in 5 minutes, water comes this way every spring. But they didn't ask. They built. The second mistake that eats money is building structures without understanding the existing infrastructure. And I mean understanding, not just seeing. That old barn on your property? It's not beautiful because someone built it that way on accident. It was placed where it is because the ground there doesn't shift in winter. The roof pitch is what it is because of snow load and wind patterns. The doors face the direction they do because the morning sun melts frost that accumulates when the north wind hits at night. Every old structure on a property is a lesson book, but people tear them down or ignore them because they look old. Then they build something new in a better spot, or what they think is a better spot, and watch it shift, rot, or fail within a few years. The person who built that old barn didn't have modern engineering. They had something better. They had 100 years of local knowledge built into their decisions. I knew a family that moved to a beautiful piece of land with an old house and an older barn. The barn was sinking, so they decided to build a brand new one. They picked a spot that looked level and closer to the road for convenience. 2 years later, they realized the old barn was sinking because of a small spring that ran underground in that entire area. Their new barn started showing the exact same problems. They'd have spent $30,000 fixing a barn that was sinking when they should have asked themselves, why did the previous owners position everything exactly where it was? The third mistake costs money every single year you operate. It's not recognizing that your property already has established patterns for animals, water, and workflow. Every successful homestead has what I call a working circle. The animal areas are positioned so the person doing the work doesn't walk 4 miles a day. The water source is uphill or central. The wood pile is near the kitchen. The manure pile is downwind and away from living spaces. The feeding areas are where animals naturally gather. Most people inherit properties that already have this circle figured out. But when you start fresh, you have to create it intentionally, and most folks don't. They build a beautiful pasture in one spot, a barn in another spot because the land looks good, a workshop in a third spot, and then they realize every single day they're walking 6 miles doing chores that could be done in 1.5. They see neighbors doing the same work in half the time and assume the neighbors are just faster workers. No, the neighbors built the infrastructure in the right circle. I watched a family spend $15,000 moving a fence line because they realized after 1 year that their working circle was broken. They had animals on one side, water on another, the barn on the third. Every single feeding took 3 times as long as it should. So they rerouted everything, rebuilt the fence, and suddenly their daily work cut in half. That $15,000 was the cost of not sitting down and drawing out the working circle before they built anything. The fourth mistake is one that will absolutely destroy your budget if you're not careful. People underestimate the cost of water in every form. They'll ask, "Do we have water access?" and hear, "Yes, a well," and think that solves the water problem. But getting water from a well to where it needs to be, to the animals, to the garden, to the house in winter when it freezes, that's completely different. I've seen people dig a beautiful well right where the house will be, but all the animals are downhill, so you can't use gravity to move water. Now you need a pump. That pump needs electricity or an engine. You need tanks, lines, troughs. A simple well becomes a $5,000 project real fast. But if the well had been uphill from the animals and the house, gravity would have done the work for free, for 100 years, requiring nothing but gravity. This is the kind of mistake that compounds. You didn't know better, so you dug the well. Now you install a pump. The pump needs maintenance. Eventually it breaks. You buy a generator for backup power because when the pump fails, the animals don't drink. You're now 3 years and $4,000 into something that could have been solved by knowing the elevation before you dug. The fifth mistake is thinking that you can run your homestead the same way you ran your life in town. And I mean everything. How you work, how you time things, how you organize labor. In town, you could run down to the store if you forgot something. On a homestead, you can't. In town, you could work in shifts because everything stayed running without you. On a homestead, the animals need to be fed every day, same time, whether you feel like it or not. The milk comes whether you're ready or not. The plants need water on the schedule that suits them, not you. People come from town life, excited to homestead, and they set up routines that would work in a job where someone covers for you. But there is no one to cover for you. If you skip the evening feeding because you worked late on a project, the animals go hungry. If you put off watering the garden because you want to fix the garden dies and you lose that year's yield. On a homestead, you cannot defer the basic work. I knew a person who ran a business in town successfully for 20 years. Smart person, capable. But on their new homestead, they tried to work the same way they always had. Focus on big projects, delegate, work in bursts. The animals didn't care about their project schedule. The milk cows needed milking at 6 in the morning, whether that person had finished their big project at midnight or not. That person lasted 6 months before selling everything. They tried to run a biological system on a corporate schedule, and it broke them. The sixth mistake is not understanding tool permanence. In town, if your tools break, you replace them. On a homestead built on a real budget, you don't. You fix them. But more than that, you understand that certain tools will literally outlive you if you care for them. A good hand tool, a shovel, a hammer, a rake, a saw, these are not consumables. They're permanent infrastructure. I have a shovel that my grandfather used. It's been sharpened 50 times. The handle has been replaced twice. But the blade is the original, and it's still sharp and strong. If I bought a new shovel every time the old one got dull, I would have bought 70 shovels. Instead, I've invested maybe $40 in sharpening and new handles over 50 years. But you have to know that's even possible. Most people think a dull shovel means buy a new shovel. This mistake costs real money because you don't understand that cheap tools on a homestead are expensive. The cheap shovel breaks and you buy another. The expensive tool gets fixed once and works for 30 years. But you have to know that's going to happen, so you buy the expensive tool in the first place. The seventh mistake is one that costs a lot of people their dreams. It's not understanding the difference between working for yourself and working for yourself. That sounds like the same thing, but it's not. Working on your homestead, you're building something. You're not getting a paycheck. Every hour you work is an hour of building. But when that building requires you to work 80 hours a week to keep up with the animal care, the garden, the basic infrastructure maintenance, you're no longer building, you're just surviving. I watched a family start a homestead with beautiful plans. They were going to build a greenhouse, improve the soil, expand the herd. But the herd they started with needed 3 hours of daily care. Adding infrastructure took energy away from that care. They fell behind. Animals got sick because they couldn't keep up with basic management. They spent the next 3 years just catching up, just maintaining what they already had, unable to grow or improve anything. The people who succeed at homesteading start small, intentionally small. They understand that you cannot build beyond your capacity to maintain. If you can care for 6 cows, don't get 8. If you can manage 2 gardens, don't plant 3. Every single extra animal or project reduces your ability to do them well. The difference between a thriving homestead and a failed one is often not skill or dedication. It's the willingness to say no to growth until you've mastered the current scale. The families that last are the ones that built a foundation first, then carefully added more. The 8th mistake costs money through inefficiency that compounds over years. It's not building your storage and tool space first, before animals, before gardens, before anything. Because every hour you spend looking for a tool, searching for stored hay that got scattered, digging through mixed supplies to find what you need, that's money leaving your pocket. I measured this once, just out of curiosity. I tracked how much time a disorganized homesteader spent looking for things, walking back and forth, moving items to get at other items. It came to about 3 hours a week. That's 150 hours a year. At any reasonable labor rate, that's money you're literally throwing away, just through organizational inefficiency. But here's the thing most people don't understand. It costs less to build a good tool storage space and a good supply organization system at the very beginning than it does to retrofit it later. If your barn is already full and disorganized, organizing it requires moving everything. But if you build the storage space before you fill the barn, it's just part of the process. The 9th mistake is one that actually prevents people from even starting. They think they need perfect knowledge before they begin anything. They're terrified of making mistakes, so they plan and research and delay until the season passes, or their energy dies, or life intervenes and the homestead never actually starts. The old way of learning is not research then do. It's research and do at the same time. You start with what you know. You make mistakes. You fix them. You learn from what actually happens, not from what a book said would happen. Books are written by people with different land, different climate, different conditions. The only book that's accurate about your specific homestead is the one written by your own experience. I know a man who researched chicken raising for 2 full years before getting his first bird. He knew everything theoretically, but he'd never actually held a chicken. He'd never felt one struggle in his hands, never cleaned a coop, never seen how birds really behave. When he finally got birds, he realized the books left out the actual feel and rhythm of the work. He would have learned more in 1 month of actual chicken keeping than he learned in 2 years of reading. The homesteads that succeed fastest are the ones that start small, start messy, start imperfect, and then refine. The ones that delay forever in pursuit of perfect knowledge never start at all. The 10th mistake is understanding property water patterns, but completely missing the seasonal reality of your specific microclimate. You might live in a region that generally gets enough rain for gardens, but your specific property might sit in a frost pocket or a rain shadow or a high wind area where the weather is dramatically different from the town 15 miles away. You don't know this until you've been through a full year, and by then you've already planted things in the wrong way. I lived on a property for 3 years thinking I was in a Zone 5 area based on the map, but my actual property was Zone 3.5 because of the way it sat. Everything I planted for Zone 5 died. Everything. I lost an entire year and significant money on plants and seeds before I understood that maps don't account for where your specific land sits in the terrain. The 11th mistake is not building with the assumption that you'll be injured or sick or unavailable at some point. You cannot build a system that only works if you show up every single day in perfect health. Homesteading is physical work. Injuries happen. Illness happens. Sometimes you just have a bad day and can't get everything done. Your system has to account for that, or you lose animals or crops or both. I watched someone design a milking system that required them to do the same set of physical movements every single day with no break. After 6 months, their wrist was injured. Chronic. They couldn't milk. The entire system collapsed because it was built around one person doing the exact same physical stress every single day. If they'd built a system that rotated the work or added a small mechanical advantage or planned for someone else to take the lead occasionally, the injury might have been prevented, or at least wouldn't have destroyed everything. The final mistake, the 12th one, is something people don't want to hear because it contradicts what they're trying to prove. It's this: not every piece of land is suitable for every homesteading goal. You cannot make a swampy property work as a dry pasture, no matter how hard you try. You cannot grow heat-loving crops on a high-elevation land that gets frost in August. You cannot run a large animal operation on 1 acre. The successful homesteaders accept early what they cannot change. If the land is wet, they build for wetness: fish, ducks, moisture-loving plants. If the land is cold and short season, they grow cold, hardy crops and quick-maturing animals. If the land is limited, they accept that limit and optimize for it instead of fighting it. The biggest cost comes from fighting your land for 10 years and finally accepting what should have been obvious from the start. Accept what you have, understand the constraints, build around them. That's not failure, that's wisdom. Now let me tell you about the 4th mistake, and this one might surprise you. It's not buying the right tools. It's buying too many tools before you even know what you're doing. I've seen young families show up with a shed full of equipment before they've laid a single fence post or repaired a single gate. They watch videos, read books, get excited, and order every specialized tool they think they'll need. A post driver, a wire crimper, a hay cutter, a fence puller. Professional-grade equipment all at once, and half of it sits unused while they're still learning which end is up. Here's what actually works. Start with 5 hand tools: a hammer, a saw, a shovel, a hoe, rope. That's it. Learn to use those 5 things until you can do them in your sleep. Learn how to build with what's in front of you. Learn to repair with what you have. Then, only when you've actually needed something 3 times and had to work around not having it, that's when you buy the tool. The Amish way is to use what works and keep using it until it truly fails. Not until it's shiny and new, but until it can't be repaired anymore. A tool you've borrowed and returned teaches you something. A tool you improvised with teaches you more. A tool you bought because a video promised it would save time, that usually teaches you that you wasted money. The money you save by not buying tools is the money you can use for feed, for seeds, for the things that actually grow your homestead. And I promise you, after your first season of fixing things with rope and improvisation, you'll have a clearer idea of what you actually need than any equipment catalog could give you. 5th mistake, and this is a costly one, is assuming your animals need the same shelter in July as they do in January. A lot of young homesteaders build one structure and expect it to work year-round. A chicken coop that's airtight and draft-free in winter becomes a sweat box in summer where birds pant and stop laying eggs. A goat shelter that's open and breezy becomes freezing in December. A pig pen that's fine in spring turns into mud soup in fall. The old way is to think about what the animal actually needs at each time of year and be ready to adjust. In summer, animals need shade, airflow, and water. In winter, they need shelter from wind and snow, but also ventilation so moisture doesn't build up and freeze. In spring and fall, the needs change again. The cheapest way to manage this is to build flexibility into your structures from the start. Roll-up panels instead of permanent walls. Removable shade screens. Adjustable ventilation. A structure that costs you a little more to build right the first time costs you 0 animals lost to heat exhaustion or pneumonia. I know a family who built 3 separate shelters. One for summer, one for winter, one for in-between. That was money they never got back. Their neighbor built one shelter with movable parts and spent $40 on hardware that adjusted for the season. Guess who saved money and kept healthier animals? 6th mistake, not understanding water in all its forms. Water is life. Fresh water, clean water, water that doesn't freeze, water that drains away so it doesn't pool. But young farmers often treat it like it's just one thing. They dig a watering point and expect it to work the same way in July as it does in February. Or they don't think about what happens when water pools around the coop and turns everything into a disease incubator. In summer, animals drink more. They need water accessible at multiple points because they're working harder. In winter, water freezes in troughs, and waterers need to be checked twice a day or they're solid ice by afternoon. In wet seasons, drainage becomes critical because standing water breeds disease faster than anything else. The fix costs nothing if you plan it. Gravity-fed systems for summer, heated troughs for winter. And heated doesn't mean electric, it means insulated and covered. Swales and ditches for drainage. A roof catchment that fills a barrel. Every water system the Amish built works because they planned for every season at once, not one season at a time. I've watched people spend thousands on fancy watering systems that fail the first winter, then end up using a bucket and a hose anyway. The old way is simpler. A tank with a lid, a float valve, gravity. Gravity works in every season. Seventh mistake, thinking small animals need small spaces. A young family gets 6 chickens and builds a coop they think is plenty big. 30 square feet inside, maybe. They think because the birds are small, they don't need much room. Wrong. Chickens in cramped quarters stop laying, start fighting, get sick from their own waste, and become miserable. A healthy chicken needs 4 square feet inside the coop and 10 square feet in the run. For 6 birds, that's 24 square feet of shelter minimum, and 60 square feet of outdoor space. Same with rabbits, goats, pigs. Every animal needs room to move, to express its nature, to get away from others when it wants to. Crowding doesn't just make animals unhappy, it makes them unprofitable. A cramped animal produces less, eats more, and dies faster. Building bigger costs more up front. A coop for 6 birds built right costs twice what a cramped one costs. But that bigger coop gives you eggs for 2 more years before it needs rebuilding, while the cramped one is already falling apart. The birds in the big space lay for 3 more years because they're not worn out. That's the math. Build it right or build it twice. The land teaches you this if you listen. An animal that has room to move is an animal that thrives. An animal that's crammed is an animal that's already on the way to failing you. 8th mistake, building in the wrong location. You have land. You have 20 acres, or 5 acres, or half an acre. You decide where to put the coop, the garden, the animal shelters, and you make your decision based on convenience to the house or how it looks from the road. You don't think about water flow, sun exposure, wind patterns, or what's actually going to happen when real weather comes. A coop placed downhill fills with water when it rains. A garden placed in shade won't produce. A shelter placed into the prevailing wind gets hammered while the other side of the property stays calm. These aren't small problems. These are the difference between thriving and struggling for years. The old way is to watch your land for a full year before you build anything permanent. Watch where water goes when it rains heavily. Watch where snow drifts in winter. Watch where the sun hits longest in summer. Watch which way the wind comes from in storms. Then build based on what you saw, not based on convenience. A coop moved 50 feet uphill might seem like a hassle, but it's the difference between dry and flooded. A garden relocated to the south side of a tree instead of the north side doubles your yield. These things matter. This is not overthinking. This is the difference between a homestead that works and one that doesn't. 9th mistake, not understanding your soil. You can't build a homestead without soil, and most young farmers have no idea what soil they actually have. They assume it's fine. They assume it will grow food. They assume it will support animals and plants and compost and everything they dream of. Wrong. Soil is different everywhere. Your soil might be clay, which holds water and is hard to work but becomes rock when it dries. It might be sand, which drains so fast that nothing stays wet long enough to grow. It might be loam, which is the dream soil that everything grows in. Or it might be full of rocks or depleted from years of use. You need to know your soil before you spend money on seeds and amendments and plans that won't work on what you actually have. Get a test done. It costs $50 and tells you what you have, what's missing, and what you need to add. Then build your garden plan around that reality. The Amish know their soil like they know their own names. They've worked it for generations. They know which fields need compost, which ones are already rich, which ones need rest. They didn't learn that in a year, but they learned it by paying attention. You can learn it faster if you're deliberate about it. Walk your property. Dig in different spots. Feel the soil. See what grows easily and what struggles. Keep notes. By next season, you'll understand what you have. By the season after that, you'll know how to make it better. Bad soil costs you every year you don't fix it. Good soil that you built costs you once and pays you for years. So spend the $50 on a test. It's the best investment you'll make. That's the real power of doing it right from the start. You're not fighting your land every season. You're working with it. And that's where the money saves itself. Now, I want to talk about something that catches most people off guard, and it's about water. Not just having it, but how you move it, how you save it, and how much it costs when you don't plan it out. The average homestead wastes thousands of gallons of water every year just because nobody set up a simple collection system. A homeowner pays a water bill. A person on a homestead can capture what falls from the sky for free, but you have to build it right. Here's what most people get wrong. They think a rain barrel is just a barrel under a downspout. That's part of it, but it's not enough. You need gutters that actually work. You need screens so you're not collecting mosquito larvae. You need overflow capacity so the whole system doesn't back up when you get a heavy rain. And you need it positioned so you can actually use the water without lifting it over your head. I've seen people build one rain barrel system and collect about 1.3 gallons in a good year. That's all the water you need for a big garden through most of the growing season. That system costs maybe $40 if you source the barrel used, which you should. $40, and you've cut your water needs by half, maybe more. But here's where most people miss the bigger opportunity. One barrel isn't enough if you're serious. 2 or 3 barrels, connected together, and you're looking at serious water independence. You can water your garden through a dry spell. You can fill buckets for cleaning, for animals, for washing down the barn. You can keep a backup for emergencies. The trick is using PVC pipe to connect them and install a simple valve system. This isn't plumbing work. This is assembly. You drill a hole, you fit a connector, you tighten it down. Worst case, you have a small leak and you tighten it more. The only tool you really need is a drill and maybe a wrench. Total cost for 3 barrels connected together, probably $80. And you've created a water system that a professional plumber would charge you $400 to design. Now, water goes hand in hand with one more thing that people often skip, and it's the composting system. Not the fancy kind, the simple kind. Every scrap of kitchen waste, every bit of yard debris, that's either going to the landfill at a cost or it's turning into black gold in your garden at a gain. A commercial compost bin costs you $150 to $300. You can build one for $15 to $20 using old pallets and some scrap wood you probably already have. The system is simple. You layer green material, that's your kitchen scraps and fresh grass clippings, with brown material, that's dry leaves, straw, shredded paper. You keep it moist like a wrung-out sponge. You turn it every couple of weeks if you want it fast, or you just leave it if you're patient. In 3 to 6 months, you've got finished compost that's worth $50 a cubic yard at a garden center. And you made it from garbage. Most people think composting is complicated. It's not. You're not doing anything a forest floor doesn't do naturally. You're just speeding it up and collecting the result. Even if your compost pile isn't perfect, even if you're not great at balancing the layers, you'll still get good material in the end. It just might take longer. The real mistake is not doing it at all. Because then you're buying bags of compost every spring, spending money every single year for something you could make for nothing. Let me tie these together for you because there's a pattern here. Soil, water, and compost. These 3 things are the foundation of everything else on a homestead. Get these right, and the rest becomes easier and cheaper. Get these wrong, and you're fighting uphill every season. The Amish farmers I know, the ones who've been working the same land for generations, they don't do anything fancy, but they do these 3 things absolutely right. They know their soil, they capture their water, they make their compost, and because of that, they can grow food on less land, with less input, for less money, and they do it year after year. You don't need to be Amish to do this. You just need to think like someone who can't afford to waste anything, because waste is money walking out of your property. Every gallon of water that runs off instead of being captured is money. Every bit of organic material that goes to the landfill instead of the compost bin is money. Every year you plant in poor soil is money spent on amendments and poor harvests. The good news is, you can fix this. Even if your property is in rough shape right now, you can build it back. You can improve your soil. You can set up water capture. You can start composting. None of it requires special equipment or special knowledge. It requires attention and consistency, and a willingness to do things the slow way that works instead of the fast way that doesn't. Start today. Walk your property. Pick a spot that matters most to you. Maybe it's where you want to grow your biggest garden. Test that soil. See what you've got. Plan your water collection. Build one rain barrel system. Get it working. Then add another. Start a compost bin this week. Don't wait for spring. Don't wait for perfect conditions. Start with what you have. In 1 year, you'll see the difference. In 2 years, you'll wonder why you didn't do it sooner. In 3 years, you'll have a property that works for you instead of against you. And you'll have spent maybe $200, if that, instead of thousands, on amendments and services and things that don't last. That's what I want for you. Not a fancy homestead, a working one. A property that gives back more than you put in. A place where the soil is getting better every year instead of worse, where water is captured instead of wasted, where nothing you grow gets thrown away. That's real homesteading. That's real money saved. And it starts with these fundamentals. Thank you so much for watching. If this made sense to you, if you're thinking about tackling your land the right way, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next one. Give this a like if it helped you think differently about your homestead, and turn on the notification bell so you're always in the loop when we drop something new. I'll see you next time.